Hey everybody, today I'm gonna show you how to manage the positioning of the parallax layers in Godot, and in the second part I will show you how to position your parallax layers in Escoria, specifically Escoria. So it's fit for both communities. Let's start with Godot. Why do I make this tutorial? The reason why I make this tutorial is because if you look on the internet, in YouTube, you have a lot of tutorials about Parallax. The problem is that most of the time they are for side-scrolling games, and they almost always demonstrate how to use mirrored parallax, which means the parallax repeats itself infinitely. And what does that mean? It means that you don't need to really worry about how it's positioned in space, because no matter where you put it, or no matter where it starts in the scene when you start the game, it will always be it will never be broken, because even, for example, if it's a side-scrolling platformer and you have like background mountains, even if they are far too much to the left or to the right, it doesn't matter because it repeats itself infinitely, and in the end they are still within your viewport or camera. But in our situation, we are more focused on point-and-click adventure games, and the rooms are usually rather small, and you just want the parallax to translate, to move sideways a little bit from the center of the room, but not too much. For example, if you have, let's say, a lamppost in the scene, in the foreground, and you want it to be inside the viewport when the game starts, when you enter the room, and then, let's say, if you walk a little bit to the right of the room, the lamppost in the foreground will move to the left. It will move sideways, but you need to be in control of where it goes. It cannot just fly off the screen, and you have to have also a good idea of where it will be at startup of the room, even as you haven't run the room yet and you're still working in the editor. So now that we are past this introduction, I will show you some stuff, but first I will recommend that you always have a sort of little test room, and I've created a dummy room here in Godot. So this is Godot without Escoria, and I've created a little room called a little scene called Parallax Tests with a few basic objects. So let me show you what they are. Those will be my parallax, and right now I don't have any parallax background or parallax layers yet. I just have the objects. So the big one, the ones with the squares, why does it have squares like this? Why does it have a pattern? It's because I want you to be able to see with your own eyes the amount of pixels that move sideways. So those stripes here are 100 pixels wide or tall, and this pattern is made just from simply colored rectangles. So I've locked them together so that they don't move, so I can totally move this independently. Okay, then I have another one here that I will use for medium movement. Yes, so spoiler alert, I'm going to use the big one, for a fixed background. This one will be the fixed background in my parallax. This one will be maybe the one that moves exactly at the same speed as the camera, I don't know yet. And this one will be the one that moves very fast in the foreground, so faster than the camera. So to demonstrate that, I also have my camera 2D here, which will allow me to drag and drop it during runtime to show you how the positions are recalculated in real time. And of course I need some correct 2D settings, so I've made a game that's 500 by 500 pixels, again, so that you can have on mind all the time the size of everything. So 500 by 500. I've made it a 2D game, which maintains its aspect ratio, so you don't get confused. It's always 500 by 500, except for this demo. I'm zooming in a little bit. I'm enlarging the window by 2. But don't be fooled. Even though it's 1000 by 1000 on screen, in the game it's still 500 by 500 pixels. And And the camera, to reflect this, I had to divide the zoom level by 2. But ignore all this. As you can see, when I run the game, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straps. So 500 by 500. Everything has the size it should be. So that's just perfect. And I can move the camera like this. And everything keeps the right size. And it's not confusing. Okay? So now we know that we have everything ready. Let's introduce some parallax in there. So that's my scene root. It's a 2D node, the most generic 2D node possible. But then I need two things every time I do a parallax. If you don't know, then I invite you to watch other parallax videos. I'm gonna skip through the basics. So you need a parallax background, which contains parallax layers. So let's put the parallax background at the root. And then let's put 3 parallax layers, because if you remember, there is the big pattern background, the orange one, and the yellow one. Okay, and now I'm just going to drag and drop every time there. So I want the background to be fixed. So let's start with the important information. Never touch transform in a parallax. That's counterproductive, because those coordinates will be recalculated all the time as soon as you start the room. So it's stupid to put a value there, because it will be overwritten. Never work with transform, always work with motion. So I don't want the background to move at all. I want it to be like, for example, the sky, the distant sky, that will never ever move, no matter how much the camera moves. So I put the scale of the motion to 0. This one should move at the same speed as the camera, so the motion should remain 1. And this one, I said I would make it move faster, but maybe I wanted to, you know what, I'm going to add an extra one. I want this one to move a bit slower than the camera, so 0.5. I'm going to change its color. I'm going to make it, I don't know, green. Okay. I'm also going to lock the layers inside, just so that you know that every time we move something, we don't move the graphical representation of what's inside the parallax. We don't move it relatively to the parallax. We just want to move the parallax around. So I lock everything. And back to the scales, and this one I wanted to move faster than the camera, so I'm going to set a scale of 2. So let's check that it works. Let's run the game, and we hit our first problem. Well, actually the core of what we want to demonstrate today. Nothing is positioned the way we positioned it in the editor. What if I move the camera? It's not really better, huh? Did I move the camera? No, I did not move the camera. I moved this. Oh, did I mention that I hate Godot with a passion? So I don't know how to put something. Yes. Okay. So let me restart the game. And let's see what happens when I move the camera in the 0, 0. So we have something interesting. We can see that when the camera is at 0, 0, nothing is shifted. It's exactly what we expect to see. If I move it even more accurately. What I see in this pink rectangle here is exactly what I see in the game. So that's the start for our thinking in terms of parallax. At runtime, any given parallax layer starts from some origin, in this case 0, 0, and then the game is in charge of shifting it sideways, up, down, left, right. And the whole question is, how much is it going to shift, and from which origin point. So this is the core, the question you must ask yourself all the time. And the reason to be of this video is because we can't always assume that the center will be at 0, 0 in the scene. Sometimes we want the parallax to be somewhere else. For example, I want it to be here. I want the center of my scene, the virtual center of my scene, to be here, and I want the camera to start also there. I want what I see in the editor to be what you see is what you get. I want that when I run the game, I will see exactly what I see in this pink rectangle. So, having said that, it will be for the next episode.